All right, we have a major trade update around Vooch, and we're also going to be looking at the Chicago Bulls and if they are likely to be buyers or sellers at the upcoming trade deadline this season. This is your host, Rico Greenhowe, and welcome back to another episode of Bulls Digest. And so today we are looking at the most recent trade update around Vooch, and also too just looking at some of the trade rumblings in general around the Chicago Bulls and if they are likely to be buyers or sellers at the trade deadline. And so let's start with Vooch. And so this update comes from Hoops Hype, and this is Michael Scotto who writes this. And so if you want to go check this out, once again, it's under Hoops Hype, and this is Michael Scotto. And so this is what he had to say, and I'm just paraphrasing this, but the Warriors are still doing their due diligence around Vooch, John Collins, Jonas Valanciunas, and also to Robert Williams. Also talking about how the Golden State Warriors are more than likely probably moving away from doing a deal to get Jimmy Butler and also to Cam Johnson. And then just talking about just how well Vooch has played. This is something that we talk about daily with him. Obviously you see that he has literally turned the page as far as shooting the three-point shot, and also to the way that he is taking care of business once he gets the basketball inside. He has been terrific for us. But I think the last part of the paragraph, I find that interesting, where it says NBA executives believe that Vooch could cost a first-round pick to pry him from Chicago. And so that is definitely worth noting in our trade update. And then also, too, just talking about Vooch and the contract situation. We know, he is on a very favorable contract. I think in this CBA that the NBA really currently operates on, he's making $20 million. He's set for 21.48 the next season, so not a lot more. And so anyway, let's just start there with what we're hearing. So I think it is good news to hear that a team is actively pursuing Vooch, right? So that means that we do have some interest. There's some noise. We've been relatively hearing that it's pretty quiet. And just the initial thoughts as far as the fit is concerned, I think that this is a great fit for Vooch. I really do. I think that the way Vooch continues to shoot the basketball from deep, I feel like that really goes really in line with what the Golden State Warriors want to do. And I think because the Chicago Bulls have changed up their offense and the way that they have ran the offense this year, wanting to get up more three-point shots and things like that, I think that actually was a value to Vooch, especially if the Golden State Warriors want him. It almost would be like he's going to a very similar situation over in Golden State. So I think that works out. And then when you look at the fact that, yes, they can shoot the three-point shot, but when you cannot get out in the fast break transition or you can't get a three-point shot, it's probably good to know that if Golden State does trade for him, they have a big man that they can dump it down to. He can be a source of offense, perhaps get to the free throw line, or you can cut off of him, because we know that is something that the Golden State Warriors really love to do. They love to have the player movement, body movement, so that fits with what they would like to do. And Vooch is a terrific screener, and so that works. From a money standpoint, I think that this is something that is very doable, for the Golden State Warriors. I think right now they're close to the first apron, so they do have the wiggle room to get it done. And they have the expiring contracts. And so as we know right now, they do have at least 3 tradable first-round picks, 2 second-round tradable picks as well. So they do have some draft capital that would satisfy the Chicago Bulls. And so that leads us to the point where it says that an NBA executives believe that, at least a first-round pick would be needed to pry him away from the Chicago Bulls. And so that's good to see that the rest of the league or other people in the league maybe see the way that Vooch is playing, that yes, he does deserve at least a first rounder here. And so we know that if the Chicago Bulls are going to move Vooch, it would suggest that you do get some draft capital back. And it would help you as far as rebuilding this team and really getting out of what you have always been doing, which is this play-in situation for the last, 3 seasons or so. We talked about how the records are pretty much identical here. So that would definitely satisfy the Chicago Bulls as far as this trade capital is concerned. But then the question really remains as to what the Golden State Warriors are going to send back, because the likelihood of Kuminga coming back, I think that is something that is probably off the table. In fact, I know I was talking about this just maybe a couple weeks ago about Sam Amick and his report that came out of FanDuel TV running back. And he was talking about how the Golden State Warriors were not likely to pursue Jimmy Butler because it's a one-year rental. And also, too, they were probably not going to want to get into a long-term deal. And talks about just the fact that, if you do send a young asset like Kuminga over for a one-year rental, that would that actually defeats the purpose, because if you don't win with Jimmy Butler, you're burning through, a trade asset, and you're also burning through really some of your youth, that could really help you, once Steph Curry and these guys maybe transition on. And so I think that's something that Draymond Green has said early on, I think in the last offseason, saying that he didn't want the front office just to jump into a deal that really sets the franchise back. And so that is maybe the thinking there for the Golden State Warriors. Who knows? Not in the front office, but just, hearsay there. But, so that is something that would be interesting to the Chicago Bulls, because I would think that if you're moving on from Vooch, you do, I think, want some young pieces, but are they going to be okay with just maybe the pick or picks? That is the question. Like, what would Golden State want to do there? And so these are some of the contracts that would fulfill getting Vooch over. They do have the expiring contracts we talked about with Kayvon Looney. We've also talked about this with Gary Payton II. I think he continues to really be in mock trades and things like that. Kuminga, obviously you see what the salary is. He is going to be a restricted free agent. And so I would get why the Golden State Warriors would want to keep him, because he has shown some upside. And I would think that if you could get him in a deal, I feel like that would certainly be a win. But one of the things that Mark Spears talks about, and this was on ESPN a couple weeks ago, I did talk about that. But one of his statements was that maybe the Golden State Warriors maybe dangle Dennis Schroeder out there as well. Like they perhaps could maybe flip him as well in a deal. And so that is something maybe that is on the table. You see that Moses Moody, he's actually under a 4-year deal. He just re-signed a contract. And so that is a younger piece. And so personally, I would like to see a younger piece come back, to the Chicago Bulls, and something that maybe you can start to fit in with what you have now. And maybe, you kind of get a chance to really kind of build, I think, a winning identity, because I think any of these younger pieces that have been around Draymond, Steph Curry, I think that, just really what they bring to the court every day, I think that rubs off on your younger players as well. And that's something that we need in Chicago. We need, people who have been around players that have been at the top. And I think that's what we need from an identity standpoint to really change the direction of the team. So you certainly, I think, want to go in that direction. But this is where I think it really gets interesting, and this kind of goes into some of the most recent kind of trade rumblings and rumors that we hear out there. Is just that, are the Chicago Bulls really asking too much? Like, is there going to be a point where they are going to want to really back down from their asking price in order to really move on? Because we know that the Chicago Bulls are playing this, they're playing this game where it's like, in order for you to get your first round pick in a loaded upcoming draft, you need to be definitely under 500. And this team is floating like right there. Now, I know with this recent losing streak, that obviously helps them out. But as constructed with Levine and Vooch on this team is going to continue to, I think, trend right around that area. And I could not necessarily see them kind of falling off. And so you just really have to ask yourself, if you're AK, does he step back a little bit and say, okay, he's willing to take multiple second round picks? Is it a situation where is he willing to move on from just the first round pick? Is AK sitting there saying, no, I want multiple first round picks? This is where it gets interesting for this team. And we know that as the season ticks along, well, then that, obviously I've said this before, as they continue to win, you move further and further away from this point. I'm not saying that you go out there and you just sell off your players for absolutely nothing. But AK and the front office really have to think about this. If Zach LaVine, if Vooch are not a part of your long-term future, you're going to have to really start to proactively make some decisions that are going to move away from these stars and also put you into a situation where you're going to be able to capitalize off of these trades, whether it is draft capital or if it's what we've seen most recently with the Chicago Bulls by going out and getting some of these younger players that have been proven in the NBA. They just maybe really haven't gotten into a good situation where they can go off and really showcase their talents, because that is sometimes some of the things that you might see. You might see a player that just, literally has to come over to a situation where they can get the playing time, they get into a system, and they flourish. And it was something that they could not necessarily do in a situation that they were at. So that is something that you really have to think of. And lastly, this kind of goes into what I think Sam Amick was saying. I guess it was on his podcast, and I was listening to it at the end of CHGO's podcast. But just look, the Chicago Bulls are seriously on a clock, and other, kind of GMs and front office executives are kind of looking at the Chicago Bulls like, what are you going to do? Because as the time goes along, we know that you move further away from the pick, and just in this time, with the way that the CBA is really set up and things like that, look, a first round pick is going to be something that I think is premium, especially when it comes down to really going out there and building up your franchise. So anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about this most recent trade update that we have around the Chicago Bulls. Do you think that, yes, the Chicago Bulls are going to ultimately be sellers at the trade deadline? Do you think that, they're just not going to do anything as far as selling off pieces? They're actually going to try to get pieces in that maybe help this team move on from where they are. And I think that that's an interesting situation, because if you're trying to be a buyer, what exactly are you going to move in order to get players over that are going to help you get over the hump of just being in the middle? So I'd love to hear that. But anyhow, let me know in the comments below what you're thinking. And so, look, I just want to thank everybody out there for liking, sharing, and subscribing to the content. It means a lot to us here at Bulls Digest as we try to reach our goal of 5,000 subscribers by the end of the NBA season. Wanted to let you know about 66.8% of you that watch are not subscribed to the channel. So make sure that you go ahead and slam dunk on that subscribe button for us, as it means a lot to us as we try to reach that subscriber count. And so I'll close with this. As I always say, the Chicago Bulls seriously have to really pick a direction, and that's the bottom line. And I think that when you look at Vooch, you look at LaVine, I think that there is really nothing else that they can do to really up their trade value anymore. I've said this probably 10, 15 games ago. I think that the bottom line is that teams have seen enough on tape. They're seeing how well that these players have played. Zach LaVine has shown you that he can play off of others. He's also willing to do other things on the court. He can be a leader, I think, at times. And he's really showing, he can do it all the time if he wants to. And Vooch as well. I think that Vooch has really shown his ability to be durable. He's showing that he can knock down a three-point shot, go inside, really be a stretch big, which we know is a premium in the NBA. And considering that he's, maybe compared to a Robert Williams and a Valanciunas, which we just showed up on the screen, I would have to think that Vooch is actually a lot better option out of those two. And lastly, what was also said in that article is that between Robert Williams and then also to Valanciunas, they're probably going to be commanding like second round picks for them. And so that just lets you know that the Bulls do have valuable pieces. I think with Zach LaVine, it's more so a CBA type of thing. It has nothing to do with him. It's just tougher to go out there and get him via the contract. But still, the Bulls have to make some decisions here. Again, it's all about making decisions that are going to help you for the long term and not something that is just going to help you merely in the short term and continue to really keep you in the bottom of the middle of the Eastern Conference. And so anyway, let me know in the comments. And as I always say, go Bulls. I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.